Welcome to Badass Women at Any Age. This is your host, Bonnie Marcus. And each week, I introduce you to amazing women who are challenging the status quo, changing the rules of the game, and proving anything's possible for women who dare to live out loud. Today, I'm especially honored to have Marilyn Tam as my guest. Her life is an inspiring story of what can be achieved if you follow your dreams. She grew up as an abused and neglected child in Hong Kong. She left her home as a teenager to come to America alone. And she has achieved incredible business and humanitarian success. Marilyn is a speaker, best-selling author, consultant, board-certified executive corporate coach, CEO of Marilyn Tam and Company, and founder and executive director of US Foundation. She was formerly the CEO of Aveda Corp, president of Reebok Apparel and Retail Group, vice president of Nike Inc., and also a successful entrepreneur who has built 4 companies. Inc. magazine ranks her as one of the top 100 leadership speakers in the world. She's been selected as one of the top 10 inspirational business speakers by one of the best professional speakers bureau. Brand Channel lists her as one of the 4 most prominent names in ethical business globally. And Marilyn is a contributing writer to Thrive Global Medium on how to live a successful, happy, healthy, and dynamically balanced life. Marilyn's book, The Happiness Choice, was the top 3 most read book by businesses according to the leading business book supplier. The book won the Silver Medal of Global eBook Awards, and the book shows how and why happiness is crucial for business productivity and success, and for your physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial health. And I can't think of a better book to be reading these days. Her book, How to Use What You've Got to Get What You Want, is in 6 languages. Her book, Living the Life of Your Dreams, was eBook of the Year in the Inspirational Visionary category. Marilyn, welcome to Badass Women, and thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's great to be talking to you. It's interesting to hear my own life story being told by somebody else. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it is amazing. And you and I met a few years ago. Maybe it was when The Happiness Choice came out and you were on my radio show. But I remember you telling the story of your childhood, and I was just blown away. You know, how you managed to leave an abusive family and come here by yourself. So if you don't mind, would you share that personal story? Because it's incredibly inspiring how you did that.
Well, thank you. And I think everybody has a story, and I guess mine is a little bit unusual. But really, it's about what we not only survive, but what teaches us how to thrive. Because when I was born, my mother tried to leave the hospital without me. So that's not a very good beginning. And then being told frequently that I'm a poor excuse for a pregnancy, and that I'm also worth less than dirt.
Was that because of your gender?
I'm sorry?
Was that because of your gender?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was a second child, second daughter, and my mother really did not want another girl. So when I was born, she was very upset about it and spared no opportunity to let me know how unwanted I was. It didn't help that I was followed quickly by 3 younger brothers. So it really cemented my place as being unwanted there.
I mean, that must have an incredible impact on one's self-confidence, self-esteem. How did you overcome that?
And I share this with people because I think everybody struggles with having self-esteem. I do, as you mentioned, some coaching and mentoring also. And even when I work primarily with the upper level management, C-suites and down, there's always this imposter syndrome that we seem to carry with us, that we are not good enough, that people, if they really found out who we are, wouldn't like us. And I definitely had that in full force, because I was told all the time I wasn't good enough. And it didn't help that when I was 7 years old, my parents gave me away. They gave me to my aunt and uncle who had no children, because they just didn't want another girl. My family actually is quite wealthy, but so it was not a matter of money. It was definitely because of my gender. So a lot of times, especially women, get some conditioning, a lot of conditioning, that they aren't good enough. And that is what carries them forward. I had that in spades, and with going to my aunt and uncle, I had to redo my life again, and became basically a childhood laborer there, embroidering the background of these needlepoint handbags and assembling plastic flowers. I spent from age 7 to 11 there. And then at 11, my aunt had her first child, and it was a boy. And they gave me back to my parents because, again, being a girl, I was dispensable, and they would rather have.
Good Lord.
So it was devastating in so many ways. So as you mentioned, having a poor self-esteem really is an issue that I had to learn to struggle with. But the good news is, out of this, is that I had often learned, because I was told that I was really worthless. I mean, being worth less than dirt, there's not much further down one could go, that I recognized that anything I can do is better than what they expect of me. So I flipped that around and really tried to do things, and miraculously, it was actually working. I was making a progress, and being a child laborer, I was also making money. So I knew that hard work can pay off. So those two things helped me kind of keep going. And the third most important thing for me was that, because I was so put down by everyone, that I really had to escape to some place to find solace. And that for me became nature. And in nature, I found the power of spirit. So from a very young age, I was connected to something bigger than human beings. I was connected to the divine. And that gave me the energy to keep going when it looked so bleak on the outside. And those are things that everyone can go to. We can all find our own little piece of nature, whether it's just a plant on your windowsill, or a park, or the ocean, or any of the above, to find that place where there is something that can nourish one. And then inside of us is always the spiritual aspect that we can also find energy in.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit before we started recording today, about how fortunate we are to live in such a beautiful place. You live in Montecito, I live in Santa Barbara. We're not far from each other, and how it's so easy to connect with nature here, the beauty of nature here. It's really hard to escape. And especially during these trying times when we're all isolated, that provides just a great connection to ground us all, I think.
Absolutely. And another piece of how I could escape that seemingly, endless spiral down, was that I met somebody else who had it worse than I did. Because at 11, when I went back to live with my parents, as I mentioned, they're actually quite wealthy. They didn't want a child that would embarrass them by not being well educated. So I was sent to a private school, like all the rest of my siblings, where I met a person who changed my life. And it was my classmate, Rebecca. She was a scholarship student. Since we all wore uniforms, it's not very obvious what anybody's social financial status was. But when I got to know her better, I found out that she and her whole family lived in a room, and they shared a kitchen and a bathroom with 2 more families. And that really shook me, because in all my life, of all the hardships I had, I always had enough food to eat. And Rebecca, at the end of the month, oftentimes the whole family went hungry because they did not have enough food to eat. And that shook me so much, because I couldn't understand why 2 working parents working full time could not afford to feed themselves or their family. It made me so angry, because I felt like this is not fair, this is not just. And what really made me do was find my own life purpose, which was to help make a difference in the world. And that's what really drove me to have the confidence, to have the motivation, and to have that anchor with my connection to spirit and to nature, to forge forth and get out of that trap I was in of being not good enough.
But not only not being that good enough, I mean, you were in Hong Kong, and you managed to get yourself somehow to the United States. How old were you then?
I was in mid-teens, and I was determined, once I discovered that my life purpose was to help other people make a difference, make a life difference in other people's lives, that I had to find an outlet for that. What would I do? What would it look like to make a difference? And so that really motivated me into trying to find how to apply myself. And what I focused on, because as I mentioned, not too many people spoke to me in my family any more than they had to, was I found a lot of interest in reading National Geographic, because that was stories all the time. We all love stories. And the stories, a lot of the times that I read, was about people in Africa and how they had such challenges in their health and their governance and getting enough food to eat. So that motivated me that I was going to get an education, do well, and go to Africa and teach them how to feed themselves and how to run their government. And so knowing that, I need to get an education. And I applied to college early, halfway through 10th grade, and I already had skipped from 7th to 9th grade. So I actually was quite young. And I got early acceptance to college, came here and worked first in A&W as a fry cook, going to school, riding my bike in the rain, because I certainly couldn't afford a car. Besides, I was too young to drive a car.
Where were you in the States?
I went to Oregon, and had to work and go to school, and after a while got part scholarship, so that I could make it through my education. My parents actually paid for my trip over, because what was it to them? The money
they were happy to
get rid of me. Here,
oh,
go,
Lord.
So it was.
Well, you used that to your benefit, didn't you?
Yes, and it's also that we can always find within our lives opportunities to look at what is maybe considered negative and turn it into positive. And another thing that I learned from my family was I learned how to watch for cues really well, how to read people, because I had to make sure that I knew what the mood was so that I can escape before they start hitting me. So when I could see the emotions changing or the mood changing, and I knew, oh, it's time to get out of the house. And I'll go out into the garden, I'll climb a tree, just basically hide until the storm passed. And this really helped me in good stead as I got into business and actually in every part of life, to be able to read cues better, because all about life is how to relate to others. And I had to learn that early, even though it was for a negative reason. I learned it well. So we can look at everything we do and say, oh, what situation we're in, and say, how can we make this a benefit, instead of looking at it as something negative and something that is taking us down.
Yeah. And where are there opportunities that, we may not, they may not be obvious,
Mm-hmm.
But when you're tuned in, I think those become more obvious. Oh, so you went to college. What was your first job out of college? Because I think you've had also an incredible journey all the way up to the C-suite in a few different organizations.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was interesting too, because I had, as you remember, I wanted to go work in Africa. So my focus always, from my National Geographic reference again, was that I was going to work for WHO, World Health Organization. So before I graduated, I wrote them and told them, okay, I'm all ready now. Unfortunately, they sent me a form letter back saying that they needed 10 years experience before they took anybody on. And of course, I wasn't even 21. Of course, I didn't have 10 years of experience. So it just took me back to, what do I have now? Since I don't have what I plan to have all my life, which is this job and this career, I had to stop and step back and say, what did I learn? What do I still have? How can I go from here? And what I learned, of course, is that I now have the skills to basically survive almost anything. And two, I now have an education and also work experience that I can apply for other cases. So then I had to say, if I can't achieve what was my greatest dream at that moment, how can I apply what I have to fulfill what my purpose is?
Right. So you were thinking at still a very young age, very strategically about how you were going to reach what your overall goal was.
And this I say comes from having a very challenging upbringing, where I had to really think and strategize, because my life was never planned. It was not like I was being taken care of. It was always a matter of survival. So here was another challenge for me to figure out how to go forward. And so I decided, well, I better practice interviewing since I don't know what I am going to do now. So I went to the college bulletin board where they post all the companies that come to interview. And one of the first one was a company called Make Department Stores, which became Macys.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I don't know anything about department stores. I'll go interview with them just to practice. So I interviewed with May Department Stores. They told me that they promoted based on merit, that they have a very an excellent program on working with the community, and they give back, all kinds of things that I really believe in. And I thought, wow, here's a company who's not going to look at me being a woman, being an immigrant, being of color, and being too young compared to everybody else. They were just going to grade me based on merit. And it just gave me another perspective of the possibility. It also made me realize I don't have to wait till I'm X age with so many years of experience to make a difference. I can make a positive difference right here, right now, what I'm doing with this company. So I joined May Department Stores in the executive training program. And as they would say, the rest is history.
Did they, in fact, promote just on merit?
Sadly, no.
I was going to say, that could be the only company I've ever heard of.
They said that.
Talk about a dream,
It sounded really good, and I bought into it.
Yeah.
One thing they did have, and it was easy to impress, because you have to remember I was very young and very idealistic. And they told me this thing they had, which is called a point of sale system, which of course everybody has now, but back then it was very new, and which meant that you had a computer feed out every day of how you did. And I thought, wow, if I have this, I know that they can't argue because it will show exactly what I did. So that was another reason why I went with that company. But then sadly, I found out, like every other company then and even now, there were other factors in play. And I had to use all the skills I learned from childhood again to move forward, because the lip service and actual execution were not the same thing.
Right. And I remember just this past weekend, I was listening to the audio files of my book, The Politics of Promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to some of the interviews that I did with you about how you learn to create visibility for yourself and how you learn to advocate for yourself. And so you were very savvy about how to navigate the complexities of the workplace at that time.
Yes and no, because
Well, we learned by experience.
you have to bang your head against the wall a few times before you learn.
Absolutely.
But what I had was that I knew that if I don't get up again, nobody's going to pull me up. So I just picked myself back up every time and keep going.
And do you still have some of that imposter syndrome?
To some degree, I think everyone has. But I think the key is that to recognize it, acknowledge it, and then keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we wait till we're perfect, when we wait to give ourselves enough acknowledgement, you just have to say, I hear you, Marilyn. You think you're not good enough, but just keep trying. Who knows? Maybe you can do it. And then go forward.
And obviously, you did it and you can do it because you've had a remarkable career. How would you say that your background and your personal journey informs the work that you do today?
My background and my personal life purpose, which is to make a positive difference, informs everything I do. Every person at some point is going to look at their life and say, what is my legacy? What am I leaving behind? For me, that has always been a constant. It's like, how can I make the world better every moment of my life? So whatever job I had, I always try to find in that particular arena how my particular status, position, knowledge, connections can help make the world better. So depending on where I was, I could do different things. For example, in Reebok, we, because going back to my memory as being a child laborer, we helped establish apparel labor standards for all the countries we worked in the world, and over time made it the standard for all apparel workers for all companies. And so this is something that I could do in my position, and having the ability to network with other companies to help make it happen, as well as to have legislation and such. So that's one example. Another example would be, say, like when I was CEO of Aveda, where we went to work with, Aveda, for people who don't know, and actually for people who do know, it's a company on how to use organic plants and flowers in a way to nourish, beautify, and improve our well-being via hair color, shampoo.
Right. I use their body lotion. I love it.
I still use the product, and now I have to pay full price for it, so you can tell it's really good. But knowing that, since they use organic plants and flowers, I found a source in the Amazon area, where the native people have been displaced first by rubber tapping, because their forests got leveled by basically Westerners coming in to put in rubber trees for all the rubber that the world was using. And then that became not as profitable as plastic synthetics. And that got abandoned. So these people got abandoned also. And then more people came in to grow cattle, again, for our hamburgers in the Western world. And they became people who worked in that industry, neither one of which really added to their lives. This is not who they are. So we were able, as a company, to go in and work with them on something that they knew and they had in their lives, which is all the native plant and flowers that give natural dye, because they have been using natural dye to color their skin, for generations, obviously quite effectively and with no side effects.
Mm.
So we had the opportunity to work with them to grow back their native plants, to bring back their heritage and have them make money, and also serve us as a company as well as our consumers, so that they have natural coloring that is good for the skin and good for the hair without any toxic side effects.
Yeah. So I see where you have been able to take your dream, take your overall goal of making the world a better place, and approaching that with very practical and strategic steps to get there. I think that a lot of people say, oh, here's my big dream, but I have no idea how to get there. And people will say, oh, that's never going to happen. But maybe what they're really missing is what you've done on your journey, which is, okay, maybe that big goal isn't available right now, but I can see how I can get there, step by step, slowly, with keeping that goal in mind with every move that I make.
Exactly. And because it's so easy to get discouraged, but when you see this giant far away goal and you say, I'll never get there, but you ask yourself, what can I do today to move me one more step closer to helping others? Just the people right around me, not wait till you make, I don't know, $10 million or whatever it is that you need before you feel secure enough to do something for somebody else. Do something now, right around you, whether it is, helping one person or through your work, helping many people.
Right. And you have had such an impact on so many, many people and organizations, talking about how to achieve greater success, how to achieve happiness. Yet, when I look at your career history so far, it couldn't have been easy as a woman, of color and an immigrant, to make it up to the C-suite. So, it's one thing to say, okay, here are some of my practical steps, and this is what I need to do to reach my end goal. But some of the things that you've achieved, to be CEO of Aveda and president of Reebok, and, those are incredible achievements as alone.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you attribute your success?
I think success comes incrementally. We've always read people saying, oh, I'm an overnight success that took 30 years, or 20 years or whatever it is. It's not, I'm grateful that really my journey has been, I look back and I go like, wow, how did I get there? It's not as you in it. It's always being able to be present, to do the best you can. And one thing I think that really helped me was that I didn't do just my job. I always learned everything around me that related to somehow my job, so that when the time came, I was not only good at my job, whatever it was, but everything that related to that, so that I was actually preparing myself subconsciously to be elevated to the next level. Because I think the one thing about women that really get slotted into, I guess is the best word, is that most of the time, women, even if they rise in an organization, They are slotted in the areas that have less bottom line responsibility.
Yeah. No P&L.
Exactly. And if you don't have that, it's hard to rise up. So wherever I was, regardless of the position, I always found out what makes that piece tick. What that means is like, okay, if I need marketing, who's good at marketing? How can I learn about that? If I need to know about spreadsheets, if I need to know about productivity, who do I talk to about that? How do I learn more so that I can be more prepared? If I need to know about production, who do I talk to? How do I make friends with them so that I can make sure that my production runs well? And so each aspect of anything I was in, I learned about. And so that I am prepared in all aspects of it to be able to go to the next level and to move sideways as well as straight up. Because a lot of times, especially for women, you may not be able to move straight up. You may have to move to another area, which gives you the rounding that's necessary to go up next. And
Yes.
one more thing, which is don't be afraid to change companies.
Yeah. Complacency can really kill your career, can it?
Yes, because a lot of times, and this is quite true with women, is that we have a deep sense of loyalty. And so we say, oh, they've been so good to me, I'll stay and support them. Then one day, boom, they leave. And you go, wait a minute, I thought I was here, being loyal to this person or this organization. And they either leave or they fire you or they put you sideways. And then you realize that all this talk about, as you asked me earlier, do they really walk their talk? No, they don't. So not to say that you're not going to be fair and reasonable and give everything you've got when you're there, but also to recognize that ultimately you want to serve in a way that fulfills your highest potential.
Right. And to find an organization that supports you in doing that.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, we get very comfortable. I've had a lot of clients who have been with organizations too long, and they find that they're stuck. They can't move forward or sideways or any which way. But they say, oh, I love the company, I love the products and services, I love my direct reports. And of course, it makes it much more difficult, that loyalty, as you said, to take the risk and leave for the benefit of our careers.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. I'd
Absolutely.
like to shift now a little bit to the topic of happiness, because I think we really need to talk about happiness in this current pandemic, where we find ourselves so isolated and so frightened. And your work in this area, has been, pretty incredible with the books that you've written. Why, first of all, why did you choose topics around happiness? How do you find that links to personal and professional success?
Happiness is really what we're all looking for, isn't it?
Yeah.
In whatever form. Some people may think that being at a certain position in a company or owning your own company is what's going to make them happy, or having so many dollars is going to make them happy. Well, that is actually the number one driver in the modern world is the dollar signs behind our name. Do we have X dollars in our bank account? Do we have the requisite number of houses or cars or planes or whatever it is? What financial measure do we think it takes before we're happy? And especially when you said now in this current crisis, we are really forced to look at that, because some people are really challenged financially right now. But also at the same time is an opportunity to think, is going after this the one thing that's going to make us happy? having the money. Because oftentimes when we focus so hard on the money aspect of life, we forget something else very important, which is our physical health. People who are so focused on making money become negligent oftentimes of their own physical health. And what happens when their physical health suffers? They start using all that money they have amassed or are still trying to amass to pay to get their health taken care of. They're going to take the time, they're going to take the money to try to regain the health, because without the health, they can't really make the money. And let's just say, and this is true of a lot of the high leadership people that I work with, they already have the money and they have the team, the physical trainer, the cook, all the accoutrements, if you will, to make their health and their money work. So what happens next is that have they focused or spent any time on their relationships? Because a lot of them, again, have not spent enough time on the relationships, and they have basically been buying them. What I mean by that is they buy presents for the people they love, they buy therapy, they buy aid, meaning like support people, things to try to make the relationship work, but without the one most important ingredient, which is the same thing that we all have, which is 24 hours in a day. If we don't allocate enough time to that, relationships don't work. So let's just say all three are taken care of, more or less. The fourth one that comes up is our spiritual belief, whether it is in a divinity or lack of a divinity. We all need to have an anchor to what makes us feel like, what is our reason for being here on this planet at this time? Do you think it's all an accident, or is it a greater plan? And that is another thing that gives us meaning. And meaning is truthfully what we're looking for. Without meaning, we have no joy. And then the last one is this whole need of community. Because for us, for everyone, we're born completely helpless. And for a certain number of years, we depend on others to take care of us to survive. And then at the end of our lives, another X number of years, we again depend on people. So it only makes sense and gives an inner wisdom that we have is going to be acknowledged when we give back to the community. So the 5 things that make up a person, and I call it the 5 decisions that can get you from here to where you want to go, which is the title of my book, The Happiness Choice, is about that. And only when you have all that in balance are you going to be most creative, most productive, happiest, at peace, and really vibrantly living your life.
Marilyn, it's such a great message for today, because as you're thinking, as you're talking, I'm thinking, but so many of us are in a survival mode. And it really is pretty scary. It's exhausting. It's physically and emotionally exhausting. And it's not easy to find that grounding and to stay connected to these things the way you are suggesting. And I think it's a great reminder for everybody who's listening, and for those who just feel, so paralyzed by what's going on and so out of control. It's a great reminder to focus on these things, to help you, and to see really how fortunate we all are for being here and being alive. And no matter what we're going through, having that kind of connection, whether it's through community, relationships, a spiritual connection, probably more important now than ever.
Absolutely. And I can use a good example. I have a friend and a body worker. She does, physical body work, which of course is not happening right now because nobody can be close to anybody. And also her other thing is she does pranic healing, which again has to be in person most of the time. So basically she said she could go into panic because she doesn't have that much savings. She's living month to month, and now she is without her two primary ways of support. She also teaches yoga, which is not that easy either because that also is in person most of the time. So how does somebody who is, as you say, desperately looking to even survive do it? So she decided, okay, I can still give to my community. I can still trust in that there's a big reason for what's going on. So she volunteered. So she volunteers at the food bank. She volunteers at the local, the garden. Shucks, I forget the name of it.
The botanical?
No, the one with the pink walls. I'll think of it in a minute, but it's Lotus Land.
Oh, Lotus Land, yeah.
Yes. So she volunteers there and at the food bank and also at the local church. And all three places said, here, take food. You need it too. So she's completely being fed. So she doesn't have to worry about number one thing. And second of all, with Lotus Land, where she has been volunteering, she has a CD on her DVD, I should say, on her yoga teaching. They're promoting that for her. It's giving her a chance to generate revenue. And these other places recognize who she is and what she's doing.
Yeah, she's got a community behind her.
It's changed her whole life. She has meaning. She's giving back. She's feeling valuable, and she's getting fed, and she's getting money.
Well, that is, that's very uplifting, and I love to hear that. I think sometimes it's important to recognize that there are opportunities that are out there, even though things may seem pretty dismal, but we need to step out of our comfort zone and our box a little bit.
Absolutely.
To find them. And in serving others, it's a great way, I think, to find that. So thank you for sharing that. And Marilyn, thank you so much for taking the time and being on the show today. Your story and your wisdom, just, so important on days like today when we all need that kind of a connection. And for anybody who is interested in learning more about Marilyn, her website is marilyntam.com. You can find out all about Marilyn, about her speaking, as well as all the books that she's written, which are fabulous. Marilyn, thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's been a joy.
And thanks, everybody, for listening today to Badass Women at Any Age. If you're feeling stuck and frustrated in your career, I invite you to check out my website, bonniemarcusleadership.com/coaching for more resources and to schedule a complimentary coaching call. See if coaching's right for you at this point. And please don't forget to leave a rating for the show or review it on iTunes or wherever you listen. Thank you.